Lunchtime Agenda.
Hello, welcome to the program. I'm David Lipson. Amid the calls to beef up privacy laws and media regulations in the wake of the royal prank call scandal, resistance is growing to a different set of draft laws that opponents claim will make it illegal to offend people. It's already unlawful to offend someone on the basis of race, but it's claimed if taken up, these draft laws would also extend that to age, gender and disability. The government says it's engaged in a round of consultation and ultimately will strike the right balance between people's rights and their freedoms in this bill. But one of the country's top lawyers, the ABC chairman Jim Spiegelman, says that these laws will impose unprecedented restrictions on free speech. He says, quote, "The freedom to offend is an integral component of freedom of speech. There is no right not to be offended." This is something that the opposition has been saying for some time, and some within Labor are also uncomfortable about the direction that the government is taking with these new laws. One of them is Kelvin Thomson, the Labor backbencher. I spoke to him a short time ago. Kelvin Thomson, thanks for your time. You tweeted this morning that Parliament will have to sit up and take notice of the Spiegelman speech. What are your main concerns about the direction the government is taking on these discrimination laws?
Well, Australia is very lucky, very fortunate to have freedom of speech, and I think it's something that we shouldn't interfere with lightly. And I think, having read much of what Jim Spiegelman has said, I am concerned about the use of the word offensive or giving offence and the capacity that that has to interfere with freedom of speech. No one wants to see comedians or cartoonists go to jail, and yet if you deconstruct their work, the fact is that over half of it gives offence to somebody. And the point that Jim Spiegelman makes is that we do not have a duty to protect people from being given offence to, that there's no international treaty that requires us to do that. On the other hand, there are international treaties that require us to uphold freedom of speech, and that needs to be given appropriate weight.
So do you believe that the right to offend should be protected?
Well, it's not a question of saying we're going to legislate to protect that. What needs to be in place are the protections for freedom of speech, and understanding that, yes, there are certain contexts in which it is appropriate to interfere with or limit freedom of speech. And of course, issues such as racial vilification, incitement to violence and the like are appropriate subjects for legislation. But the presumption in favour of freedom of speech must be strong, and there should not be some general obligation to prevent offence being caused.
A few other elements raised in his speech, one of them the burden of proof, so that those accused of discrimination would have to prove their innocence rather than the prosecution proving their guilt. What do you make of that?
Well, the bill is now out for public consideration appropriately. There's a Senate committee which is inquiring into these things and will be reporting later on in February next year. So I think that all of those sorts of questions are appropriate for consideration through the Senate committee and other public processes.
And what of the claim that the laws would also have the effect of introducing a blasphemy law in the workplace, and that publications too could be banned under these laws?
Well, I certainly wouldn't be in favour of anything which could go towards a blasphemy law. I think that we've seen the insidious ways in which such things operate in other countries such as Pakistan, and in Australia we have freedom of religious expression, and it should mean just that people are entitled to say what they think, what they believe in relation to religious matters.
When Nicola Roxon announced these laws, she said that, quote, "there will be no reduction in existing protections." Was she right?
Well, I think the point that Jim Spiegelman has made, and he is a former Chief Justice in New South Wales, is that there are sections of this bill which extend the question of giving offence into areas where it has not previously been. So things like age discrimination and the like. So if you had someone, a Prime Minister for example, calling someone a silly old bugger, does that then mean that this constitutes age discrimination, gives offence and is therefore unlawful? I think most people, when they think about that, think that that would not be appropriate and would want to see freedom of speech being treated as a very important matter.
Have you gauged the thoughts of your colleagues? Do you have much support for your opposition to these laws?
What I'm saying, David, this morning is that there needs to be proper parliamentary consideration of the reach of the legislation, that the Parliament and the community should not extend the question of giving offence lightly. People should understand the consequences and have a discussion about that. So all of us need to do that before we come to a view. There's plenty of time to do that. The bill is now open for public discussion and consideration. That's an entirely appropriate process of parliamentary and community scrutiny.
Have you raised this directly with the Attorney-General or the Prime Minister?
Well, not at this point. Jim Spiegelman's speech came out yesterday. My point is that we need to have consideration of it, and people may have legitimate alternative points of view to express, and I would certainly welcome them. What I think we shouldn't do is interfere with freedom of speech lightly, and that's the point that Jim Spiegelman is making, and I think he's made it very powerfully. He's drawn on the work of Jeremy Waldron, who's regarded as one of the world's most foremost jurisprudential scholars, who has done extensive work concerning this issue of giving offence and where you draw the line between hate speech and harmful speech, which should certainly be the subject of legislation, and free speech. So I think there has been very detailed consideration given to this, and this is something which I think the Parliament and the broader community needs to take into account.
OK, can I also get your thoughts on the royal prank call? ACMA is considering an investigation, but is there an argument for existing regulations to be beefed up in any way?
I think two things, David, in relation to that. First, that the existing law needs to be enforced. There are rules concerning the taping of phone calls and concerning the broadcasting of material without the consent of the people concerned, and it is appropriate for the Communications and Media Authority to investigate these matters and take appropriate action based on the evidence. I'm sorry to have to break it to you, but there are some media outlets who think that the law does not apply to them. This is wrong, and the existing rules and regulations need to be enforced. Secondly, I am attracted to the idea of a privacy tort. The Law Reform Commission has recommended such a thing. The government is considering it, and I think that if we had a privacy tort and a clearer right of people to sue for invasions of their privacy, we might see less cowboy media conduct.
Kelvin Thomson, thanks so much for your time today.
Good to talk with you.